just wanted to say, don't give up on us. Please. Or what I really should say is, don't give up on me.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Haunting the Narrative. Today we will be attempting to answer the question, The Hollow Boy. Whose fault was it and why is it Lucy?
Boo!
Well, maybe not. So yes, we will try to answer the question, whose fault was it really? Through spirited debate and a limited amount of physical violence. I'm your referee, Lizzie, and on the pod with me is, well, everyone, because nobody wanted to miss this mud fight. So let's introduce ourselves. Today we have...
Meg.
Mairead, with only correct opinions.
And Natasha. And I actually just want to hijack this intro really quickly with a very brief message from Lock Nation, who are holding this really cool book drive event, and you should find out all about it.
Did you know that the Lockwood & Co., Shadow and Bone, and My Lady Jane fandoms are teaming up to do an international book drive? For more information, check out New Year, New Book, Fall in Love with Reading book drive on any of our social media pages. Happy reading!
Okay, back to you, Lizzie.
Okay, so I think we're going to have a lot to talk about today, so let's dive right in. I feel like there's two types of people. Those who, when they read this book the first time, thought, oh, Lucy, you poor baby. This is so unfair to you. And those who thought, oh my God, Lucy, you need to grow up and stop being such a teenaged girl. So do you guys remember where you landed the first time you read this?
I'm a secret third thing. Read the books in a 4-day blur, having watched the show. I watched the show the day it was cancelled, incidentally, so I may have caused the cancellation. I'm sorry.
Oh my God, it was you!
Anyway, I read the books in a feverish 4-day blur, during which...
How did you read them in 4 days? They are so long.
Well, the hilarious thing is, I drove to Dublin and back. Like, I drove from Cork to Dublin and back in that time, and I also did 2 days of work. I went to choir. I don't know. I can't explain it.
Did you sleep?
Did you sleep at all?
Girl, a guard wouldn't ask you that. So, anyway, basically, I don't have a clue what I was thinking during my first reading of The Hollow Boy. I don't think I was capable of human thought at that point at all. But I will say that my sympathies have always been a bit more with Lucy, just because I'm much more of a Lucy type of feminine than a Holly type. And I've definitely been around girls who made me feel subhuman for not being skinny. And I'm not saying that they set out to do that or that Holly set out to do that. 90% of it was definitely in my head, and 90% of it is in Lucy's head. But I just know the feeling so well, it's really hard not to sympathize with her.
Yeah, and in general, I think it's also, as far as my perspective, it's really hard not to empathize with Lucy the first go-around because you're so in her head because everything's from her point of view. And Stroud does such a good job of writing a 15-year-old girl. But I just remember, honestly, being really frustrated with everyone. Like, I was just like, come on, what is everyone doing? And I was, like, shaking the book. So... I don't think I thought it was one person's fault, but I think my perspective has also evolved over time, as you will hear probably throughout the rest of this pod.
Yeah, I think I was definitely against Lucy for the entire book the first time I read it. Every time she was like, oh, and Holly did this mean thing, and I'm like, that's in your head, girl. I actually gained more sympathy for her reading the books further.
I was so in Lucy's head the first go around. Like, the first time I read through the books, I managed to avoid all the spoilers. I thought, right, I want to read these things. As soon as I touch fandom, I know I'm going to be spoiled for everything. So I read them all first before I, found a Discord or anything. And I was just so in Lucy's head and just rolling with the plot beats and everything that I thought Holly was a witch. I thought she was awful. You know, I was 100% on Lucy's side. She was so rational. She was doing her best. She was great. You know, and then on the reread, I was like, oh, wow, Lucy's, Lucy has some personality issues. But the first round through, 100% Team Lucy.
All right, so I think let's start there then. From Lucy's point of view, I think if you asked her, especially anyway midway through the events of the book, whose fault it all is, she would say Holly. So let's talk about, why is Holly a witch?
So I'm going to be accusing Holly, j'accuse Holly Monroe, But
Come on, you're a
as our,
French translator. You can say it better than that.
I can say other things in French too, but I'm restraining myself because maybe children are listening to this podcast. Anyway, pardon my French. I know that some of our listeners do speak French. Daphne, I'm sorry. I can do better than that, I swear. Anyway, as our resident pedant, although Natasha is like challenging me for that right now. J'accuse Alejandro.
Oh, I like that. That sounded good.
Now all the French people have stopped listening. As our resident pedant, I want to say that I find it very difficult to say that anyone in this situation is fully at fault, partly because there are so many mitigating factors at play for everyone, but also because I just don't accept the idea of anyone ever being fully to blame for someone else's actions. Like, you can't say that any situation is all one single person's fault, because even if Holly does something totally out of pocket, Lucy is still responsible for her reactions to that, and vice versa. Like, I have, because I'm pretentious, I do have a quote from Viktor Frankl here, and I'm just going to read it. Because between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. I love Viktor Frankl, so and I think he's right, and I think it's just something to keep in mind as we go through this, that everyone is responsible for the way that they respond to people. Anyway, so this is more my presentation of the ways that Holly contributes to the situation than me arguing that she's entirely or mostly responsible for the whole thing. Because she's not a demon, and she's not to blame for Lucy's jealousy and insecurity, but I do think that she blunders in some crucial and insensitive ways. So the main problem with Holly is that she has good intentions, and as we all know, those are the things that the road to hell is paved with. She's one of these people who has super clear ideas of right and wrong, or like what the right way and the wrong way to do things are. And she has this really good aim of making the agency more professional. And that is what she was hired to do. So, and she also has this really great gift for order and organization and seeing more efficient ways of doing things. But I've met a lot of people with this gift, and I like to think in certain ways, maybe I have it myself. So I know that the flip side of it is this inability to respect the freedom of others. When you think you're right, and it's even worse when experience proves you right a little bit, you just think everyone should do things my way. Everyone just needs to get with the program and it will be fine. And we really see this kind of my way or the highway attitude in the way that she corrals Lucy into doing things the way she wants. And she can be pretty invasive. Like the way she tidies Lucy's room, that pissed me off. I do remember, I don't remember my first reading very clearly, but my earlier readings of the book, I always thought that was a bizarre thing to do, to tidy someone's room without their permission. And people have pointed out, well, maybe Lockwood told her to do that. But when Lucy says, hey, you tidied my room, when they have their big blowout at the end, Holly doesn't say, Lockwood said to do that. She said, your room was disgusting. Or I don't think she actually says disgusting, but she says something like that. So the implication is, I was right to do this invasive thing. You and your habits were the problem. And
the most invasive one that I think she does is she throws out half the stuff in the trophy cabinet, doesn't she?
I don't remember.
The sources and the sensitive items, the psychically charged items and stuff they've got in the trophy room and the locked storage downstairs. She chucks about half of them away.
Yeah, Skell's the one who says that, and he's clearly very insulted by this.
But that's just, to me, that's just super out of pocket.
Yeah.
You don't get hired to come tidy up, and then obviously these things are being kept for a reason. You just chuck them? Like, what?
I'm pretty sure they were there illegally. I don't think they were supposed to have them. That was my reading of that.
Until the Creepy Shadow, it was still legal to keep hold of sources.
Some sources, sure. Maybe not quite that many, and maybe not in the way that they had them.
I don't know. I mean, because Barnes sees Skull on the side, doesn't he, in the Screaming Staircase, and he doesn't say, "Oh my god,"
and tells
that's
them
illegal.
to get rid of it.
Yeah, he tells them to get rid of it because it's dangerous. He doesn't tell them to get rid of it because it's illegal. If it was illegal, there's no way you wouldn't find them. Come on. Anyway, yeah, we've derailed you, mate. Keep going. Tell us why Holly is awful, and stop being nice about it.
She's not awful. She's okay. No, she is. She can in certain in certain respects, she is pretty terrible. Like the way there's that famous conversation she has with Lucy about the laundry. She has builders coming in to put up a shelf and she wants Lucy to move her laundry, but she won't just come out and say that. She has to go through this whole routine of, oh, do you want me to move your laundry? And Lucy goes, no, that's fine. And Holly goes, well, okay, but I have builders coming. And Lucy says, okay, great, I'll move it before they come. And Holly says, well, they're coming in 20 minutes. So what she really meant was, please go move your laundry now. But she didn't say that. She has to go through like these like 3 little loops of like indirect passive aggressive weirdness. And to be clear, if someone talked to me like that at work, I would hunt them for sport. So like it's terrible communication. And I mean, I think Holly absolutely has reasons for things, but I don't think she has reasons that we'll discuss for having this very indirect communication style. But reasons are not excuses. So basically the thing with Holly is that she's coming into an established dynamic with all these very bright ideas about how to improve things, and that's brilliant. But she doesn't really accept, she's not allowing for the fact that people don't like change. People might have other ways they want things done. And, you know, even if Lucy is annoying her, and yeah, she definitely is, Holly still isn't very fair. She doesn't make any allowances for Lucy. And I think that's a big problem with the two of them. Neither of them make allowances for the other.
The other thing is, it's not just a place of work for Lucy. She lives here. And I think that adds a whole new layer. Like, if this was just Holly coming into an office and being told, you have the responsibility to keep the office looking nice and pristine, then it would be very clear that Holly has the right to organize to her heart's content. But this is where they live, and Lucy really doesn't want Holly coming into her house and telling her how to live her life, let alone telling her how to do her job.
And I think this is something that we'll return to time and again, is that a big part of the problem is there is too much work-life blurring going on here. It's very difficult for anyone to keep personal and professional separate in a situation like this. Another big and important aspect of the dynamic between Holly and Lucy is the whole question of appearance and femininity. And it's like, I've said I have experience with this myself, and I know it's not other girls' faults if I kind of look at them and make a comparison between myself and them and go, they're better looking than me, I don't like them. It's obviously not Holly's fault that Lucy feels threatened by her appearance, but Holly is definitely judgy about her appearance. Like, for example, telling her not to show up to the client meeting in pajamas, so rude. Lucy is always very conscious about being presentable for clients. Even if, like, okay, sometimes I think Holly says that, you're not always dressed at that hour of the morning. But when has Lucy ever not been dressed for a client meeting? It's patronizing. It's implying Lucy can't do her job properly. It's commenting on her appearance in a really unfair way. So it's horrible. I mean, Lucy has been a brat. She's been rude, but this is just vindictive. So that's not a nice moment from Holly. And I think, even though I have a lot of understanding and sympathy for Holly, and I definitely I think she's responding. She didn't shoot first. If we're talking who shot first, shot first.
No, that one was like on day 1 or day 2 though. When she tells Lucy not to attend
No, she must have been there
pajamas.
for a couple of weeks, because then the next day is Winter Garden, when Lockwood says she's been there for a couple of weeks. And we get very little detail about what happens in that interim time. And see, this is like the first time I read it, I kind of assumed that Lucy was horrible in that time. And it's the only thing that explained to me why Holly would be this mean out the gate.
Yeah.
I think of Holly's behavior as being the cross between a disapproving school marm and a stereotypical mean girl. You really see that here.
Like, again, Holly has really good intentions. She knows that she can make the company better. But I also think that she does think of herself as a bit of like, oh, I'm Lockwood's assistant. I'm here to make Lockwood's life better and Lockwood's company better. And she does start to kind of assume this bit of a second in command role, like the way she comes and sits next to him in a meeting and then starts just kind of talking for him. Yes, she's doing good things, but she hasn't discussed it with anyone in advance.
That's definitely a bit of a power play. It's definitely like jockeying for position.
I mean, it is, but that's also kind of what your secretary is going to do in a meeting. Your secretary is meant to sit beside you so that they can,
But to speak for you in the middle of a meeting, if I did that, like, for my boss, I'd get crucified afterwards. So, I mean, again, it is a little silly to apply, like, contemporary corporate dynamics to this thing, because it's not exactly the same situation at all. And Stroud is going for a different, more Victorian vibe, a more old-fashioned vibe in their company dynamics. But I think definitely there is an element to which Holly, you know, she has been powerless in the past.
She's trying to mold them into something that she sees as being the right way to run this company.
Exactly. And this is her good intention, and she's right. She does make improvements. Things work better with her there. But she's wrong about the way that she does them, in my opinion. And I think that at first she's doing these, like, you know, she's doing it for this good reason, but then also it gets complicated because Lucy is making her feel small and powerless, you know, and we'll get to that in the defense part, I think. But she hits back at Lucy by being more and more controlling. And then there's like the lowest of low blows is when that moment when Lucy comes home, finds Holly wearing Lockwood's jumper, and Holly's like, yeah, it's not the most flattering thing, is it? Still smells like him, though.
That's very much an I see you, girl. I know what you're thinking.
Exactly. She's weaponizing Lucy's crush on Lockwood, and it's like, that's just nasty.
And it's right. It's
so
right in that
my
moment
summary,
where she's now coming on the job as an agent. Like,
yeah,
all kinds of bad things going on in that scene.
Exactly. It's such a stupid time to provoke someone.
In defense of Holly for that scene, though, like, I think Lucy really brings out some of Holly's insecurities about being an agent, because Holly was originally a field agent, wasn't she?
Right.
And she went on cases, and she got up to her grade 2, so she was still a trainee. And then Cotton Street happened, and then they relegated her to desk work, and they said, okay, you're not strong enough to be an agent anymore. You know, she never got back out in the field. And I reckon she probably always felt a little bit self-conscious about that. You know? And so when Lucy walks in, Lucy, Miss Super Agent, super talented, best agent in the company, walks in and says, what are you doing? You're not even a real agent. You know?
Yeah. No, it is understandable, but like, she makes it really
yeah, it's still
with that whole thing with the jumper.
And Lucy didn't know that it hit her that hard either. You know, Lucy wasn't trying to be
every time Lucy brings out the claws, Holly like produces a machete and goes, "Oh, I see you. I'll raise you." So my summary of the whole thing is that Holly is definitely provoked. Lucy's behavior isn't acceptable, but Holly escalates like crazy, and she refuses to see how her own behavior is contributing to the situation. And large parts of her behavior really are unacceptable, like the passive aggressive, the indirect communication, the controlling power plays. So, and also, I mean, I do think I was just literally, I think the other day I reread the scene at the end of The Hollow Boy where Lucy, like, you know, comes back from under Eichmer's, whatever, and she has that little kind of moment of not quite reconciliation with Holly, but they have like a non-aggressive conversation. And Holly's response to Lucy coming back from the dead is, "Oh, so you made your way back then? I'm pleased." It kind of sounds like something you'd say to I don't know. Do you know that song? And the cat came back the very next day. The cat came back and he wouldn't go away. That's what it sounds like. It's like, oh, you again. Well, I guess you didn't die. Congrats. Like,
I'm pleased. I think I'm
like
pleased. I'm convincing myself that I'm pleased right now.
Yeah, I mean, Lucy says that it's non-hostile, but the "you made your way back" thing is, anyway. So yes,
she's got a low blow for non-hostile.
I do have a lot of sympathy for Holly, but she can strike very low and very hard.
I imagine a lot of that is due to her previous working conditions, because before she comes to work for Lockwood, she works for Rotwell, and we see a tiny bit of Rotwell. He is horrible. And I imagine the indirect communication and a lot of these other things are the result of her having worked for an abusive boss. And probably not just Rotwell, right? People hire people like them. So I'm guessing everyone that she worked for, even up until she finally hit her breaking point and quit, was just a horrible, abusive boss.
I wonder if that's not how they talk to her. You know, the passive-aggressive, the drip-feeding, all of that. That's probably how they talk to her in the workplace, isn't it?
Well, and if she's having a hard time being heard, right, her voice is probably not being heard at all at Rotwell's, so maybe she has to be this really indirect.
No, I definitely think that it is all a product, maybe not all, but like largely a product of her experiences at Rotwell, and that is why I actually, even though I'm like, girl, what are you doing? I'm still I do feel a lot
Hey,
of
also,
sympathy
she's
for her.
18 years old. What the hell was she doing as Rockwell's personal assistant anyway? Why did they put her in that position? She's 18! Okay, she's good at it, but she's so young.
Well, and I mean, there's the point there that she hasn't had other work experience either. Like, we talk a lot about how, like, and we'll talk more about how, like, Lockwood and Lucy don't have other professional experience, but Holly doesn't have any either. Like, she's only worked in this one toxic place, and so she doesn't have a lot of good models of what a good boss can be like. And even though Lockwood is showing her more and more of that, like, he's listening to her and he's appreciating her and her contributions, it takes time to readjust and to change your approach. And the Hollow Boy, you know, it doesn't, as much as we joke about the timeline and how long it covers, it's not enough time to override those habits completely.
You imagine the Hollow Boy from Holly's perspective, and she's just joined this tiny company, and she's probably not too sure about it, but she gets in there, and Lockwood is listening to her, and she has this opportunity to really feel valued and to make a difference, and it must feel so good those first few days. And then Lucy shows up and is horrible, and she's like, oh, here's the catch.
Right.
Knew it was too good to be true. And also add to that Lucy pushes Holly's buttons the same way Holly pushes Lucy's. Like, we have kind of discussed this a little bit, but, you know, Holly was kind of taken off field work due to no fault of her own, and now she's, I think that she very much wants to be a real agent, or feels maybe undervalued. She's insecure about not being an agent. She's insecure about being just a desk jockey. So I think someone like Lucy, who's actually been through the same experience that Holly has, even though Holly doesn't know that, but who's a very successful and very brave agent, I think that she probably makes Holly feel that sort of icky, oh, that's what I should be feeling, in the same way that Holly does to Lucy. So I think that they're each a red rag to the other's bull.
Most of what she sees of Lucy is Lucy half-arsing everything, isn't it? You know, she's rattling around the house in saggy pajamas. She turns up to, you know, she gets up really late. If Holly doesn't go out with her on cases, she doesn't really see much about Lucy.
Well, and then she does go out with her on a case, and it's the one where Lucy messes it up completely.
Yeah.
Which I think actually contributes to Holly becomes more confident and actually more kind of aggressively, you know, looking down on Lucy as the book goes on. And it kind of, the tension ratchets up over those weeks. And partly it is because I think Holly is trying to give her the benefit of the doubt early on because she's heard she's such a good agent. And then she goes on a case with her and is like, she disregarded all the protocols. She did horrible things. She was... Holly thinks she's ghost locked, right, at Winter Gardens. She thinks that...
Yeah, Holly thinks that she was ghost locked, and that's why she went to go talk to the ghost or something.
Right, so that's not skillful as an agent. So who is this junior agent who doesn't do a good job to look down on her for not being an agent? I think is Holly's perspective after that.
I think that's more, though, because on that particular case, Lockwood gets really badly injured, and that's mostly because of Lucy, isn't it? And then Holly's kind of the one to nurse him. And I think, you know, Lockwood was the only person who was nice to her. Lockwood actually listens to her. You know, Lockwood actually values her. I kind of like, when I see like the Holly-Lockwood dynamic, I see more of like a sibling relationship in a way. Like Holly's kind of stepped in as an older sister in a way, and Lockwood's like ripe for adopting, isn't he? So I see that. And then after that, Holly just goes like full on feral to Lucy. And it's very much like, okay, you have this crush on my baby brother. He obviously doesn't like you back, and you're causing problems.
Yeah.
You know? That's kind of the impression that I get.
Because this is another thing that Holly never really sees the two of them getting on. But, they start fighting more or less as soon as Holly shows up in The Hollow Boy, and they never really get back on their normal footing. So as far as Holly is concerned, Lucy has this rabid crush that Lockwood doesn't return, and she gets more and more out of control the more her boss doesn't respond to her inappropriate crush. Like, you can, from Holly's perspective, it looks a bit wild. She's missing a lot of context, and that's not her fault either.
Absolutely. Lockwood tells Holly to keep them off cases together after Winter Garden. And Holly has to be picking up her cues from them. So let's talk about Lockwood and why this is all Lockwood's fault, actually. Because so much of this personality clashing, so much of the setup for why this is a mess is Lockwood's fault. Is that boo because you agree or disagree? I can't tell.
It's because I disagree.
I think many of us disagree with this one, but go ahead.
There are some people who feel extremely strongly that it's Lockwood's fault.
Yes, I have seen that too. I don't feel super strongly that it's Lockwood's fault, but I'm still going to try to tear him apart a little bit here. All right, so he makes a ton of mistakes as a leader, as a manager, and actually a little bit also as a friend to Lucy. So to start with, Lockwood hires Holly while Lucy is away. He doesn't tell her before she gets back, and then he acts super shifty when she catches him leaning over the shoulder of said new hire, smiling at something, whatever Holly has on the desk. All right, so he knows what he did wrong there, and instead of apologizing, he immediately gets defensive when Lucy's like, what the heck is this? What is going on? He's like, no, this was a good decision. And for the next several weeks, he keeps trying to show Lucy why this was a good decision. Like, that's the thing that seems to be in his head the whole time. And so he keeps heaping praise upon Holly and then looking at Lucy like, see, didn't I do good hiring us an assistant? When are you going to acknowledge that I was right? By the way, we're talking about Holly and Lockwood being siblings. They both definitely do this like, wait, but look, I was right, so you should just go along with me. Very much a trait they can
They are
share
so
in
similar
common.
in so many ways, aren't they?
Yeah, but then it completely backfires, right? Because that's not what Lucy wants to hear. That's not what she needs. She needs connection. She needs to feel supported. She needs to feel like she's still valuable. And literally everything Lockwood does, trying to show how valuable and how good a job he did hiring Holly, makes Lucy feel worse about her own value to the company and her own personal value to him. And then he decides that the best way to handle this situation that is clearly kind of brewing and bubbling its way up here is to let them figure it out on their own, which is terrible. And it seems like it's just because he doesn't know what else to do. All right, so he doesn't have any other professional experience, and I think he thinks this is the right thing to do, is to try to sort of stay neutral and not take anyone's side, and that's what a good professional adult boss would do. But actually, from Lucy's perspective, he's always taking Holly's side. He's always explaining why Holly is right and how they should do what Holly wants them to do. And he's probably also doing this to Holly, but Lucy doesn't see it. She doesn't see him defending Lucy to Holly. So to her, it feels very one-sided. And on top of that, they're having this clash in the middle of this that is, just aside from Holly completely, the clash over Lucy's talent. And that is also making Lucy feel unvalued, unsupported, and unconnected from Lockwood. He deliberately drives a wedge between the two of them. And we know why. We know why he's doing this, but to Lucy, it looks like he just doesn't value her anymore, and he's telling her she's using her talent all wrong, and he's very angry with her after Winter Garden and can barely look at her, can barely speak to her. From Lucy's perspective, that all hurts so much. It feels very much like, this isn't my friend anymore. This isn't the guy who I have a crush on anymore. This is just my angry, cold boss, right? And the only boss she's had before this is one that wouldn't listen to her and didn't value her, and now she's reliving that a little bit.
Now I'm sad for Lucy, even though I'm about to rip her apart in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Free my girl. She did nothing wrong.
So then lastly, this is a classic example of Lockwood not accounting for personal feelings. He's not really thinking about how Lucy's feelings are affecting her behavior. He's not really even thinking about how his feelings influencing his actions are affecting her, right? He clearly has really complicated emotions that he's dealing with. He, at the after Winter Garden, he clearly has this moment of, oh shit, if I lost Lucy, it would really, really hurt. And that's really the reason he's pulling away. But to Lucy, it just looks like anger. So he really doesn't account for that in his he goes into these strategic modes, and when he does, he doesn't think about people's feelings. And yes, you can be right and still be hurtful at the same time. And then pairing Lucy and Holly up at Eggmares especially. Like, who would think that is a good idea when you know that their emotions are so high?
I do have a bit of a different take on why Lockwood is stepping back from Lucy in operative situations. And I think that moment in Winter Garden where they have that little mini fight on the steps before everything goes wrong is pretty crucial, because Lucy makes some sort of a nasty comment about Holly, and Lockwood goes, well, you know, you don't have to worry about her because I'm going to look after her. All right, so you just stick here by yourself and I'm going to go off and look after her. And Lucy's upset after this. Like, she says she watches him go hot-eyed. And, like, Lockwood's not stupid. Like, he knows he made her cry. And then she, like, it's very obvious later on that Lucy was vulnerable at that moment because she'd been wound up, because she was feeling needy and abandoned, I think is how George puts it. So, I mean, I think what Lockwood is conscious of is not so much how Lucy is affecting him, but how he's affecting her. I think he's, like, worried that he can't, like, I think it's both sides. I think he's worried that he's getting too wound up by her and that he's winding her up too much, and that neither of them can be, like, emotionally stable together, so he has to keep them separate. And then, so when you have this, like, when you think then about, like, the teams in Akemere's, and you assume that, okay, Lockwood and Lucy can't be together, then the teams, they do make a little bit more sense. But I agree, it was a stupid decision to put her with Holly in that moment. But I think his reasons for stepping back from Lucy are a little bit more complicated than just, I don't want to engage with feelings, and more, we're having a bad effect on each other right now, and I can't seem to control it, so I'm just going to remove myself from the situation.
I have a slightly different take on that, in that I think that, because he says that after Wintergun, he didn't trust himself in an operative situation with her. And I think it's more about, like, the loss of control for him. Because that thing when he said to Lucy, when he made her cry, like, it's written in a way like he deliberately, like, he wanted to hurt her. He wanted it to cut. You know, he wasn't, and that's not something that Lockwood would normally do. He's normally very kind of aware of his team and to keep things positive and things like that. But obviously he was so mad at her that he lost control on that front, and then that led to, you know, Lucy almost dying. And he obviously blames himself for that, so he wanted to step back because of that. Like he said, he didn't trust himself to keep hold of his emotions around her anymore. And with the teams, honestly, I've gone over the teams in my head a lot of times, and it makes sense to me that actually Lucy ended up with Holly. Okay, because you've got, George, Flo, Kipps, Kat, Bobby, Lockwood, Holly, and Lucy. Yeah, yes. So that's 8 people. Okay, so Kipps is completely blind, deaf, and dumb when he's in there. So he's the most dangerous partner to have by far. Okay, and the strongest agents in that are Lockwood and Lucy. And Lockwood's not going to give Lucy the most dangerous partner, so he's got to be with Kipps. Right? Yeah. And that leaves everyone else. Kat and Bobby are going to be together because they're the same team. Okay, Flo is not going to work well with either of the girls, so she's got to be with George.
Right.
Okay, and also George is kind of average talent. Holly's kind of average talent. Flo and Lucy are the strongest talents with that, but Flo's rusty on the agent skills. George has got the agent skills, but not the talent, so those two go together.
It's also a complete wild card. If you wanted to try to put Holly and Flo together, you have no idea what's going to happen there, so that would be risky.
That's terrifying. That's a terrifying prospect.
George is quite steady, like, just in general, he's a steadying influence on people, and also him and Flo have met before. Like, I think it's established even in The Hollow Boy that, you know, they get on okay, or maybe it's not at that point, but, like, he's known Lockwood for a year. Is it okay? He's known Lockwood for a year before ever we get to meet either of them, so it's quite possible that Lockwood knows that Flo and George have a little bit of a rapport already. So it is, as you say, it's less of a wild card situation putting the two of them together. They know each other a little bit more. It's more of a known quantity.
George and Holly would be a really good team, but just not at Akemere's.
Yeah. Exactly.
Because you need somebody with the talent, you know, and they're both average. So,
and Lockwood actually shows this throughout the book. He's making really good, actually, strategic decisions. He's just not accounting for the emotional kind of wild card aspect of it. Hiring Holly is a good choice for the agency, and she comes in and she does a fantastic job. He really is right about that. It's a good strategic decision. And probably it was a good strategic decision to put Holly and Lucy together at Aegmir's. They didn't know how dangerous it was going to get. And he, trusted them to stay more or less professional. He didn't know how bad that was going to blow up either. So I think he does make good strategic decisions throughout the book, and it still blows up in his face.
I mean, he does have such a soft spot for Lucy as well, because Holly says to him, I think that you should take Lucy off because she's too rattled. And Lockwood takes her aside and she said, no, I'm fine, but she's obviously not fine. And he doesn't,
Right.
He just takes a word for it and says, okay, off you go.
Yeah. But, I mean, but I don't know. I'm very much in defense of Lockwood's actions throughout the Hollow Boy, just when you look at them from a professional perspective. And I think he's also seen at this point how Lucy has been acting towards Holly throughout the rest of the book, up to this point. And he is trying to kind of, as we've talked about, in his own way, he's trying to have them figure it out together. But it's very much in his right to make these judgment calls. And I think that's something that Lucy is just struggling with at certain moments.
And to be fair, it does work. After Aegmir's, Holly and Lucy are much better together.
Exactly. And I mean, and he is trying to do things that works, and because he recognizes that Lucy's behavior towards Holly has been horrible. And at certain moments, he is embarrassed by her actions. And, there's particularly a couple moments at Winter Garden where he's kind of calling her out on it. We've talked about some of them already. But he knows that, Lucy's not behaving the best. And honestly,
But then after Winter Garden, Lucy tries really hard to be nice to Holly as well. So in the week or so before Aegmir's,
she says she's trying to be nice to Holly. I don't necessarily believe that her behavior is as nice as she thinks it was.
Plus, Lockwood won't have seen it because he's staying away from her.
he's avoiding her. Yeah.
It's true. I do think that, the story of the Hollow Boy, Lockwood's arc in it is very much about leadership, and the mistakes he makes are around being autocratic and not taking, as you've put it already, Lizzie, basically, he doesn't take the emotional dimension into account. He's not thinking of the full person. He's just thinking in overly pragmatic, utilitarian terms. So he's really thinking of them just as agents. And it's funny because it's actually not really very like him to be autocratic, because we see in The Whispering Skull how democratic he is about making a lot of decisions. I think, or in The Screaming Staircase as well, he goes, I think we're up for this in Coombe Kerry. I think we're up for this. I think we can do this. But what do you think? And he lets them make the choice. And the same with the bet in The Whispering Skull. He says, George, Lucy, you want to do this? You want to do this? Okay, let's do this. He does take them into account in important decisions. So it is a bit unlike him in the way that he suddenly starts in this book just going, no, I'm the boss. I'm making
Are
the
you
decisions.
sure though?
And
I
think
he could easily be consulting with George.
Oh, he is. He's definitely consulting with George.
Right. Well, they're having those.
Yeah, that's true. We do see that in the background, in that really brilliant scene actually, where Lucy overhears them talking and she thinks they're talking about Holly, but they're actually, when you look closely, they're talking about her. I think that's a really great piece of writing, because it's never revealed that they're not talking about Holly. You just have to figure that out from context. So that's a bit that I particularly love. But I do think that Lockwood's ambition is ratcheting up.
I don't attribute this to his ambition, although I guess the ambition is definitely there. But the reason that he's being this autocratic, do you think that's ambition, or is that because his feelings are all tangled up?
I mean, we kind of talked about this in the Lockwood episode, did we? I don't know. Or maybe I posted about this on Tumblr. I can't remember what I've said to whom at this point. But, the ambition and the tangled feelings and the whole family legacy thing, it's all a tangle together. So, his ambition is really about getting the company successful and making a splash, making a difference, and that's really about trying to make sense of his family's deaths. So, Lucy not getting with the program, he hires this perfect new assistant, and everything, they finally have all the tools that they need in place to really be successful, and they have this wonderful opportunity in the Chelsea outbreak, that they could, if they could only get into it, they could really make a difference there. And Lucy is being a spanner in the works, and he doesn't understand it.
And Lucy scared the crap out of him at the veiled ghost as well, didn't she? He was really rattled.
Yeah, so he is got this fear in the back of his mind the whole time about her possibly dying as well. I think that's a definite thing. Like he's conflating the two of them a bit in his head, Lucy and Jessica. And he even kind of says this at the end, under Akemir's. He says, losing someone who is dear to me, it's happened to me before, I'm just not going to let it happen again. So he really is afraid of a repeat of what happened to Jessica. And I think that moment in Winter Garden must have really felt like a repeat, that just kind of the running up the stairs and the will I be too late, won't I be too late. Like I think the parallels there are deliberate, and I think they must have been something that he was conscious of after the fact. Lucy being, so the tangled feelings being this kind of, so on the one hand he's afraid of Lucy dying, on the other hand he really needs to make this success because he has this whole important search for meaning, and Holly is helping him with that. Lucy's getting in the way of that. So I think when you look at his decisions, like he's making these autocratic decisions, and I think it is part of, like, it's overdetermined. All of these factors are feeding into it. His feelings for Lucy, his fear of her dying, his urgent need to make a difference with the problem and all that.
Right, so Lockwood is in fact human. I guess we can forgive him for that. And Holly the same, and she could have been more understanding, and Lockwood could have handled his emotions better. But I have to say, none of this would have exploded the way it did if it wasn't for Lucy. The first time I read this book, I think I already said that I definitely heaped nearly all the blame on her. Girl is struggling, but come on, being all that jealous and petty and unprofessional and just needlessly hostile. So, Meg, can you tell me, why is this all Lucy's fault, really?
I am so happy to tell you, Lizzie, as someone who feels most strongly that it actually was Lucy's fault.
No!
Well, okay. First, we have to start off with where Lucy was really at the beginning of the series. At the beginning of the Hollow Boy, rather. Which at this point, she's been settled into the agency for a bit, and she has become kind of arrogant. She has her position. They're working a ton of hours, but she's still really proud of what they're doing. She feels really good about her life. She really feels really good about the kind of agent she is. And she's talking a lot about why her talent makes her special. And she does things like she does, they do the case with the veiled woman, and she talks to the ghost in front of Lockwood for the first time, and she thinks it's amazing, but you can tell he's more apprehensive about the idea. Then she goes and does the solo case by herself with who we always refer to as the armchair money ghost, even though it probably has a more official name than that. And that's when, she doesn't set up any of her normal defenses. She doesn't do any of the follow the protocols that she's supposed to in the Fitz manual. And she...
Like, there are kids in the kitchen in that one as well. There are kids in the kitchen, a room away. She doesn't even put a chain across the door.
Yeah, it's an entire family in basically the next room, and Lucy doesn't observe any of the normal protocols. It's not like she's the only one in the house who's at risk in this situation. It's just her. So, and Lockwood doesn't even know she's been doing this. This is just Lucy off on her own doing this. Only Skull knows. Lucy.
I wonder if she lied on the case report. She must have.
I'm sure she did. I don't doubt it, but that's an interesting question.
Yeah. You can't imagine that she told the truth there.
At some point,
because
Lockwood reads
noticed.
the books in the future and goes, "You did what?" Yeah.
Right. Well, and I mean, Deep Rack, I imagine, sees some of these also case reports too. So major problems.
Yeah, she's definitely lying. She's lying.
Yeah. I mean, so Lucy, we love her at this point, but she's maybe not the most pleasant person to be around because she's getting a little bit full of herself. We also see her with this when she goes back north to visit her family, and she, has a real moment of basically being like, oh, all these country bumpkins, and I'm, worldly, and I'm not afraid of going out after dark, when for people without talent, going out after dark is terrifying. So
and she says something. She says, my family's so meek, they scarcely argued back. What do you mean they scarcely argued back? Why are you arguing with them?
Right. she's not setting herself up for success there. She's not setting herself up to make friends. And we see throughout the rest of the book that these things about her, this kind of inflated sense of self that she has at the beginning, all gets chipped away. You know, at this point, she's the only girl in the company. She's not afraid of ghosts, and she's not afraid of going out after dark. And her talent makes her so special. We see all of those things kind of fade away as she comes to terms with a lot of things. But speaking of Lucy not wanting to make friends, we've talked already a lot about her dynamic with Holly and how she immediately dislikes Holly. And not only does she dislike her, she's jealous. And that jealousy quickly turns into spite. And we see this in their initial interactions with each other, where Lucy doesn't even bother to say hi to Holly. She just says, "There's a girl sitting in my chair," which is just, I cannot imagine being a professional setting and someone saying something like that to me. I would be livid. Like, this person can't even acknowledge that I'm a human. Like, they can't observe basic common, like, courtesy. So that's how things start. And as I've alluded to already, I don't think they get much better from there. While Lucy says she's polite, Holly says to the contrary under Aikmir's. She says that Lucy's rolling her eyes, sniffing, and acting like basically a surly teen. And Skull says the same thing. He also says that Lucy's behavior towards Holly has been pretty terrible. In general, she's dismissive of her, really plays down her importance to the company. In general, she's just very unprofessional, verging on mean in many situations. But the real thing that gets me about Lucy is less even about, you know, her sense of herself and her interactions with Holly. It's her behavior around ghosts and her inability to follow safety protocols that just, like, every reread I do of The Hollow Boy, it terrifies me more and more. And I understand. This is why I empathize with Lockwood more and more the more I think about this, because Lockwood is concerned about her for reasonable, reasons, for lack of a better word. He is her boss. She is her responsibility. He has already seen one agent die under his watch, Robin, who was around before Lucy. And he has feelings for Lucy. Like, he cares about her deeply. And as we, talked about already with Wintergarden, when he went through that, like running up through the stairs and to try and save Lucy, it obviously reminds him of Jessica. He doesn't want to see Lucy die. And he has already seen her in previous books, in The Screaming Staircase, and then he had to pull her back from the well there. He also they had to save George in The Whispering Skull. Those things weigh heavily on him. He has his own trauma from watching people he loves die, and he wants to keep her close, and he wants to keep her safe, which is exactly what he says to her at the end of The Hollow Boy.
And Lucy's doing her utmost best to upend all that, isn't she?
She is. And right after Wintergarden, like, she doesn't go to him and apologize or say, I was wrong or I'm going to do better. In fact, she basically is like, no, I'm going to keep doing it.
Right.
Lucy is kind of a monster of Lockwood's own making here, though, because in The Screaming Staircase of The Whispering Skull, she's still a bit scared of ghosts, and Lockwood's always going, no, you could do it, Lucy, you could do it, you're great, you could do it, yeah, you're great. By The Hollow Boy, she believes him fully.
Yeah.
He is the one who, like, kind of encouraged her to make use of the link with the skull more in the beginning. Like, they do that whole thing with, they go to the Bickerstaff house, and it's his idea to bring along the skull.
She really doesn't want to do it. She's like, no, I don't want to be linked to a ghost. It's bad for me. It'll have influence on me. And 6 months later...
Yeah.
It's influenced her, and it has been bad for her. Funny
Lockwood
that.
gets less reckless over those first 3 books, and Lucy's getting more and more reckless.
But her recklessness builds up over the course of The Hollow Boy very dramatically. And, and a lot of this says, it feels to me like she's really acting out for attention. In some ways, she feels a little bit like a child who never got enough affection, which in many ways she was and still is. And so she's looking to get that attention in other places since she's not getting it from Lockwood. And one of those is kind of becomes ghosts, even though she initially was so opposed to that becoming part of her experience.
I'll go talk to the ghosts. They like me.
Exactly.
I think as well, like, Lucy has always we've said this in the Lucy episode, that she's always based her self-worth in her talent, and the more Lockwood withdraws the praise that he was initially heaping on her, the more she kind of the more she turns back to that initial source of kind of, I don't know, self-worth, good feelings, satisfaction. I will say I disagree with you very strongly, Meg, on just like the thing about how Lucy and Holly interact. I mean, we've kind of been over this already. Lucy is incredibly all that's coming into my head is swear words. She's not very nice to Holly on their first meeting. She's mean to Holly on their first meeting. I think there were a lot of extenuating circumstances in that, and it could have all resolved and been played out nicely if Holly wasn't the kind of person that she was. I think, if Holly wasn't a cow, in many ways, it could have worked out.
We see Lucy having a lot of personality clashes with everyone except for Lockwood, right? When she first meets Flo, not good. When she first meets George, they fight like cats and dogs for months. So this is definitely a Lucy problem.
Yes, but also Holly does escalate things, and there are massive extenuating circumstances in that first meeting. I agree that it was totally inappropriate and unacceptable, but she'd just come home from this really disappointing meeting with her family that, I mean, she does kind of cover it up with like a veneer of arrogance, but I think actually she just felt really left out. She ran away from them, and then she came back, and no one congratulated her for making it big or doing a good job. It was just more of the same, more of
well, then I think she felt like this was no longer her home, right? She went home and she doesn't know these people. They don't know her. They don't appreciate her. I'm going back to London where I am appreciated and someone's sitting in my chair.
Exactly. That's the big moment. That's why it's so difficult for her to be polite to Holly in that moment. It is. It's difficult to know who to believe, because Lucy seems to be making an effort. She claims she's making an effort with Holly after that point. Holly says that you've been sniffing and rolling your eyes at me since the very beginning. I don't think either of them are being objective in that moment.
Although Skull also, I like to use Skull's voice as the objective truth in these books, but the objective truth in the worst possible way. And Skull definitely says that her behavior towards Holly is terrible.
Right. That is pre-Winter Garden, though. That's pre-Winter Garden.
But, I mean, if Skull is saying that her behavior is bad, and he's the one, encouraging her to murder people all the time that annoy him, her behavior is pretty bad.
I remember him saying that to her, you clearly hate her, but I don't remember him saying to her, you've been behaving badly.
He says something like, hark at you, Queen Fibber. Every time she turns around, it's like you're trying to pin her to the walls with your eyeballs or something like that.
Okay, but that's not really the same as you're being rude to her face. I mean, probably she is also being rude to her face because this is Lucy. But I do think, I don't know.
Here's that quote. Hark at you, Queen Fibber. I've told Porky's in my time, but that shocks me something awful. You can't stand her. I could feel my cheeks flushing. I collected myself. That's a slight exaggeration. She's too bossy, maybe, but bossy nothing. I've seen the way you stare at her when she's not looking, like you're trying to pin her bleeding to the wall with the power of your eyes.
That's pretty vicious.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of Team Lucy stuff here. Does anyone else want to chip in, or will I keep monologuing?
Because one thing we haven't really touched on dramatically with the Lucy, in defense of Lucy, is that she is also grappling with her own very complicated feelings about Lockwood at this point in time, which is that he has kind of maybe unintentionally, perhaps, led her on a little bit. He's given her all these special gifts, and he's acted, treated her like she's great, and he's told her how wonderful she is. And then he turns very cold to her, and he starts pushing her away, and he's trying to act very professional. So, of course, she's a little off-kilter there because of that. And I mean...
And at the same time, he's trying to build Holly's confidence up by telling her she's great and she's wonderful and, Yeah,
I don't think we really talked about how painful this entire book is for Lucy, right? She comes home after, saying that's not my home anymore. I belong here. Finding that she's been displaced. Lockwood is being very cold towards her. He's not listening to her. It doesn't feel like he values her anymore. And she knows she's being a little bit petty and jealous. And I think she just can't help it. She's so much in her feelings for this entire book. It's just very, very hard for her. Like, even though she knows she's doing things that she shouldn't be and she acknowledges it, she keeps saying, you know, no, I'm fine with Holly. I'm fine with Holly. She's great. I'm fine with her. It's fine. Like, she's trying to convince herself, but she can't get past the fact that she feels so hurt and betrayed by both Lockwood and George. Right? George also, who fought with her like siblings who hate each other for months, he immediately is very nice to Holly. So how can Lucy read that as anything other than these boys prefer Holly over her, and now her place in the agency, her place in her home, in her own family that she's built for herself, is at risk.
Also, like, Lucy walks through the door and thinks that the boys have tidied up for her. And I don't know, is that a thing in American culture? Because in British culture, it's a big thing. Like, you go overseas, you come home, and your family makes the house nice and tidy for your arrival.
No, but that
I
sounds
want
adorable.
that to be a thing.
Really?
It's such a thing, and I married a foreigner and he doesn't do it, and I'm sad every time I come home. But it is such a thing, and like, so she comes home and she thinks, oh, they were excited for me coming home, so they made the house nice and tidy for me. They put in all this effort, especially knowing how tired they've been lately, you know. And then she finds out, oh, it wasn't them after all.
And she's brought them almond buns and expects them to be like, Lucy, you're home early. We're so happy to see you. And you brought us almond buns, and none of that happens. All right, so let's talk a little bit about George, because I was not even going to include George in the outline, but Nat insisted that if we're going to blame Lockwood for not displaying the best leadership skills, then some of that blame has to go to George as well. So Nat, do you want to talk about George?
Look, there's not really much to say about George, because like, when you read the books from Lucy's point of view, you know, George is the only person kind of reaching out to her when she's all in her feelings. You know, Holly's off being Miss Prissy Holly, and Lockwood's being, you know, splendid isolation in a way, isn't it? But George is actually like taking her to the archives with him and trying to kind of skirt the subject. When she's attacked in the ice cream line, George is the one there defending her. George is the only one who kind of tries to bring it up with her, and then actually listens to her answer. But the problem is, George is so bloody conflict avoidant, which is amazing for a boy who's like been throwing pots and pans at this woman.
I think he's really defensive of Lockwood.
He's very defensive of Lockwood, and he's also very avoidant of feelings, isn't he? Like, I don't know, maybe he has talked about like the whole Lucy Lockwood thing with Lockwood in the past. In fact, I think it would be a little bit out of character if he never said, hey, she works for us. Stop, you know, stop making eyes at her. I would be surprised if he hasn't said that at some point. But to Lucy, all he's kind of said is, yeah, I see you. You love all that mystery about him. I know, I can see it. And that's the only kind of way that he's ever sort of acknowledged it to her. He just doesn't like things that are feelings, does he? And he doesn't feel comfortable talking about that with Lucy. And this is a problem because George's management, okay? Lucy, everyone says, oh no, they hired Holly without inviting Lucy, without consulting with Lucy. Quite frankly, Lucy is a junior agent. It is 0% her business. It's not her choice to make, okay? George is deputy, so he's like the vice GM of the company. And he was involved in the hiring, as he should have been, but also he should be involved in the, you know, management of staff, of personnel. And when he's watching Lockwood stuff it up, and he is acknowledging that he's watching Lockwood stuff it up because he's trying to approach Lucy, he's obviously talking to Lockwood about it because we see a little bit in that scene on the stairs. You know, he knows, and he's not doing anything.
I think he is. I actually think he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. Because yes, he is Lockwood's second in command, but he is not a people manager. He is not HR. And I know with these small companies, people wear a lot of hats. But even so, I think he does exactly what he's supposed to do when he sees a problem with somebody who's working for the company, which is he goes to her boss and addresses it with them. He goes to Lockwood and says, you need to talk to Lucy. You need to do more to support her. And Lockwood kind of brushes him off as far as we can tell. Or, you know, he doesn't do enough, that's for sure.
That's the thing, though. George knows he's not doing enough. You know, he knows, and he should.
But it's Lockwood's company.
It is Lockwood's company. But then, like, George has been with him for such a long time. It's not like he's ever going to fire George, and George knows it. So it's just George not wanting to get in the line of fire there to kind of throw his hat in the ring and say, hey, sort this out. You've got to stop this.
Instead, he kind of suggests it to Lockwood, and then he goes along with what Lockwood says, which is, it'll be fine. Just trust me.
Exactly. And we see that when Lockwood has the bloody concussion and he decides to come down for the meeting anyway, and George is like, no, you stay in bed. But then he doesn't really do anything beyond that to make Lockwood actually listen.
No, and Lockwood does not go back to bed.
And I think that's what he's doing behind the scenes with the whole Lucy, Holly, Lockwood thing. He's like, this is a problem. You've got to do something. Oh, you're not going to do anything? Okay, then fine, whatever. I'm going to go research.
But I mean, what could he actually have done? Like, they're all stubborn as hell.
I mean, he could, like, address it directly, but I want to say that's asking too much of him, but he addresses everything else directly, just not that.
But I think he doesn't know how to address this directly. Like, I think he feels very out of his depth with this particular emotional problem. And we don't know in the books if George has any sisters, but I could see him just being like, this is a kind of girl issue I don't understand, and, like, I don't know. I don't think he has any idea what to do, which is, I think, why he keeps going to Lockwood to be like, hi, you should do something. But, like, he doesn't have any ideas to offer as to what to do.
Yeah.
I also think, I mean, it's such a personal issue between the two of them. It's very hard to see, how, like, the thing is, it's one thing to intervene in an argument between two colleagues, in your job, in your, position as mediator, which, that's different. It's another very different thing to get involved in an argument between a couple. Like, that's just asking for trouble. And I do think it's absolutely hilarious that in that opening scene when George and Lucy walks in on George Lockwood and Holly, George promptly, like, removes himself from the situation and, like, leaves them to have their fight. It's very much, okay, mom and dad are gonna have an argument now, so we're just gonna go and hang out at the bus stop. Yeah.
And Lockwood's body language there is very coupley, isn't it? He's very much like the boyfriend getting told off until he sits at his desk. And then it's all business.
And then he's the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Persona back on. But there is, like, the whole moment where Lucy catches Lockwood with Holly, and he, like, kind of jumps away from her, like, I swear, honey, I wasn't anywhere near her. It is quite funny. It's quite boyfriendy.
So much of this is through Lucy's eyes, though, and this is the thing that I took to the first time I read the books, because she thinks George is walking Lucy to the bus stop to be nice to Holly, when it's so obvious that George just doesn't want to be there for the argument between Lockwood and Lucy. And so many of the little interactions that Lucy sees throughout this book, she clearly misinterprets immediately.
It's almost like she's human, too.
Something we'll come back to in the narrative voice episode, no doubt. This is where Lucy, as I think we can most clearly argue that she's behaving as an unreliable narrator, but it's more like kind of, it's a limited narration. And my favorite example is absolutely that moment when she's in Jessica's room and she overhears them talking about her and thinks it's Holly. I just think that moment's brilliant.
So there are actually a few more people we can paint with the blame brush. We already brought up Skull, but I also want to bring up Flo, because these are two characters who can clearly see exactly what's going on. And instead of hiding from it or trying to fix it, they both actively make it worse. Our little chaos gremlins. Right?
Respect. Yep.
Flo's, like, comment on, oh, it's been about 18 months. I desperately want to know what that's about.
Can you read us the quote, Nat?
Flo says, where's Lockie? The fork paused. Off with his new girl, is he? I blinked. No, I said. She doesn't come out on cases. She's not even an agent, really. More of a secretary and house cleaner than anything. I scowled at Flo. How do you even know about her? She scraped unconcernedly at the corner of the tray. Didn't. I don't understand. It's been 18 months since he hired you. That's about standard. Figured it'd have probably moved on to the next one.
That is so mean.
So if Lockwood's 15, when Lucy meets him, 18 months before that is 13 and a half. Who was he running around with from the ages of 13 and a half to 15?
No one. But she's just...
No one. This is clearly just...
She's just trying to wind her up.
Yeah, she must be. She must have heard it through the grapevine or something.
Or she's purposely just causing trouble because she can, because she knows how obvious it is that Lucy has a crush on Lockwood, and that most likely, I think she picks up on the fact that Lockwood feels the same way.
Yeah. Anyway, so she doesn't help matters. Neither does the Skull. The Skull is like egg whisk.
Skull is terrible. You know, I asked my daughter today who she thought was at fault for the Hollow Boy. And she said it was the ghosts.
I mean,
she was talking about the fetch. But she does have a point in that, like, Lucy's constantly connecting with all the ghosts in the Hollow Boy, and she's not really in control of the connection, is she? At this point, she's just kind of opening up her mind and letting them connect as willy-nilly as they want, and she's being super influenced by all of them. She jumps off the banister at the Winter Garden house, and she had options. She was just so... What was it, May? I think you said that you think that the ghost is constantly making people reenact the death.
I think so. Like, I mean, I think that the fact that the Night Watch kid died by falling off the banisters, died by falling, and there's a Night Watch stick stuck through the banisters. It points, and then Lucy does the exact same thing, climbs out over the banisters. I can't say that word. Nearly dies by falling. It just really feels like Robert Cook wants to reenact that moment of forcing someone out over the stairs. That's just what he's doing. So I think that's probably why Lucy did that, which does suggest that she was being influenced by him more than she realized. But I think she says that herself as well.
Yeah, and George, I think, is the one who says that she must have been feeling abandoned, or at least he implies that she must have been feeling abandoned, and so she was really vulnerable to that ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think Holly's the one who points out that she was ghost locked, and Lucy's very defensive because she thinks she wasn't. But that's the thing. In the Hollow, in the earlier two books or the later two books, she would have realized that she was being influenced, she was being ghost locked a bit. But in this book, she doesn't, because she's, like you said, she's looking for that connection with the ghost because she's not getting validation from Lockwood, so she's seeking it from her talent. But she's just so... All of the ghosts, the Skull as well, they're all whispering in her ear and they're impacting her emotions and they are kind of manipulating her in a way. I do think the Skull was trying to, like, get her to leave Lockwood and Co. to get her on her own. He's slowly chipping against it.
Certainly right at the very end, right after Aikmir's, she makes her decision. She makes her announcement after talking to the Skull.
Right.
So the Skull definitely is poking things along in that direction.
It is funny that the Skull will, like, when Lucy, he talks a big game about, wanting to make Lucy's life miserable and whatever, but when she's genuinely in danger, he takes action instantly. Like, that moment in Winter Garden when Holly is, when Lucy is waiting to see, like, she's watching the ghost come up the stairs, basically. She's watching the lights go out, and he goads her into getting back into the circle by mentioning Holly. So when she's genuinely in danger, he does something about it.
Apart from at the beginning of the book, he doesn't, does he? He just sits there and laughs when she almost gets ghost touched by the ghost in the bakery.
In the bakery? Which one's that?
It's on the list of cases that Lucy lists off when Lockwood's worried about them all having near misses. And she says that there was a ghost in the bakery that almost ghost touched her, and she only woke up because she fell asleep. She only woke up at the last second because she smelt the burnt smell as it climbed out the oven, and the Skull was just kind of spinning in his jar and laughing.
Yeah, I suppose there's maybe there's a different level of threat there. Like, Robert Cook was a very dangerous ghost. So anyway, we're getting off topic again. How out of character for us?
Yeah,
we've never done that before.
This is the thing. Like, we've got this whole big list of people whose fault it could be, don't we? It could be Holly, it could be Lockwood, it could be Lucy, it could be Scarlett, it could be George. I still think George shares some of the blame. Come on.
Well, I think having gone through all of this, at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that in the end, the fault lies with Jonathan Stroud. I mean, come on. Not even just in a meta way. It is Stroud's fault for writing the typical internalized misogyny leads to clash between Ms. Not Like Other Girls and Mr. Perfect over a boy. Right? That is kind of the trope that we're seeing in this book. I've seen people complain about it. I've seen people get really frustrated with this book. And I think, especially having just gone through everyone's reasons for being the way that they are and the way that it all shakes out, I actually think calling it just this trope is a really shallow reading of the whole situation. For one thing, this isn't really about it's over a boy. Yes, Lucy is jealous, but it's much bigger than her crush on Lockwood. It is her place in the company, in her family, her job, which she places so much of her personal value in. All of that is feeling threatened. And I think that the reaction she does have to Holly is very relatable. I mean, May, you already said that you found it incredibly relatable. I did too. Even though I was really frustrated with Lucy for the whole book, I found it so relatable it hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I ripped apart a lot of Lucy's reactions, but I'm also here to tell you that as a 15-year-old girl, I would have absolutely felt the same way. And that's part of the reason I think I'm critical of Lucy in this book, is because it's too real. It hits too close to home. So honestly, hats off to Jonathan Stroud for writing such an accurate portrayal of what it feels like to be a 15-year-old girl in that way.
This is definitely the book that had us all questioning, is like Jonathan Stroud, the pen name of a young girl, wasn't it?
Yeah, how did he know?
Exactly.
Yeah, so, and I think even most of the tension in the Hollow Boy isn't about Holly. She's a catalyst. A lot of the tension is really between Lucy and Lockwood, and I think that is the intention there, very much so, is that Holly's presence makes Lucy realize she wants more from Lockwood, she wants more from her job, she wants to feel more valued, she needs more. And that she wants to exercise her talent beyond what Lockwood will allow, and what's conventionally considered safe is happening at the same time. And so this all leads her to, in the end, seeking more independence.
Yeah, I think there's kind of a sense of inevitability about the whole thing. Like, I think one thing we've kind of established is that probably Holly and Lucy, they would have clashed no matter how perfectly Lockwood had introduced them. I think they were always going to butt heads. And even if she wasn't there, I think Lockwood and Lucy would have butted heads, partly because of the talent thing and Lockwood's, obvious reasons for not wanting connections with ghosts, but also because Lucy is always going to push at his walls because she wants more from him, and she's always going to want more than he's really able to give at that stage. And then, it's very hard to blame Lockwood for being unable to give that because of his history and all the reasons we've already discussed. So it's really hard to see how any of them could have grown the way they did without that clash. And that's what makes the Hollow Boy conflict so satisfying to me, because it arises so naturally from their personalities, and it's not just based on like arbitrary misunderstandings or miscommunications that could have been cleared up if only anyone had had like a 5-second conversation. I don't think it was ever that simple. And I also think that, that's actually a good thing. It's important for teens and for everyone to understand that conflict arises naturally as you engage with the world. And in a certain sense, it's something that indicates that you're actually growing, and it's a good thing, even though you shouldn't necessarily seek it out. So that's why I really enjoy the Hollow Boy, because it's just also necessary as part of their journey to becoming the great people that they become.
So personally, I had a ton of mixed emotions after reading The Hollow Boy the first time, and I think that's a fairly universal experience. I know some people dove straight into the Creeping Shadow because they were desperate to see what happened next, and do Lucy and Lockwood get back together? Does she come back to the agency? Like, especially if you're Team Lucy, you really want to know, how is this all going to shake out? I also know some people who were very frustrated and threw the book against the wall. Or possibly you were like really hoping it was all going to work out, and then at the very end, Lucy leaves, and that's another good reason to throw the book at the wall. A select few weirdos did odd things like go back and adapt the entire book into a 6-episode screenplay. Netflix, please call me.
Please call her.
They're good. They're really good. Okay, I lost sleep for about 4 days reading those things.
I loved getting your comments because they just kept coming in, and I was wondering when the heck you were sleeping.
She wasn't.
She wasn't. Yeah, I know that's the answer. It's the answer to everything. But I will say also, because I went back and reread it in prep for doing those scripts, going back to The Hollow Boy after you've completed the series, I think it's clear that none of the rest of the series works without it. And this is what allows the characters to grow into the versions of themselves who they are by the end of the series, who are able to then save the world. In the end, I think I've already said Holly is the catalyst. And she pushes Lucy to grow in so many ways, to seek independence, but also self-acceptance and confidence in her talent, which she has by the time we get back to her in the Creeping Shadow. None of that happens if Lucy doesn't leave. And Lucy leaving pushes Lockwood to reconsider how he treats his associates, and most especially to grapple with the feelings that he has for Lucy and to figure out what, he decides clearly in that time we don't see him during the Black Winter that he's not going to let her just go. He's lost too many people already. I'm very proud of him for that. And so I think however you feel about the clashes between the characters in The Hollow Boy, the inevitability of it all feeling so satisfying, especially on a reread, which I highly encourage everyone to do, because I think you have a lot more appreciation for the depth of the characters and their growth if you're coming back to it after having finished the series. So unfortunately, we are way out of time. This is probably our longest episode yet. We're going to have to discuss things like how cool and creepy all the ghosts in The Hollow Boy are in another episode. I loved the bloody footprints so much. That was actually one of the main things I was like, I wish I could see this on screen.
Yeah.
But also the poltergeist tearing apart the entire department store as they're trying to escape it, and the fetch. Oh my gosh. So we'll probably have a whole episode on ghosts and how cool they are upcoming.
We have teased so many episodes, but we have so many ideas.
I know.
We're just going to have to keep doing this for about 10 years. I hope you guys are ready for a committed podcast relationship.
Yeah. And if you would have any questions that you would like us to answer on a future episode, you can always email us. No one has actually emailed us yet, but I keep putting it out there. Anyway, but you can find us at hauntingthenarrativepod@gmail.com, and you can also find us in all the places on social media. If that is more your style. We love talking to you there too.
And we love talking to each other. This was so fun, guys. Thank you so much for joining us.
As per usual, I'm not here voluntarily. There was a gun to my head.